They said no maid ever lasted in that house. Not one. The gate was grand, the mansion breathtaking. But inside was a battlefield. At the heart of it was Madame Rose. Beautiful, polished, and deadly with her words. She slapped without warning. She yelled without mercy. And her insults could cut deeper than a whip. She had broken 9 maids in 6 months. Some ran away crying. Some left before morning. One jumped the back fence barefoot. Then Naomi walked in, dark-skinned, quiet, carrying nothing but a nylon bag, and the fire in her eyes. She wasn't there to run. She wasn't there to please. She had a sick daughter, nothing left to lose, and a weapon Madame Rose had never faced before. What Naomi did in that house didn't just change her life. It broke the unbreakable Madame Rose. The mansion on Bishop Adeyemi Drive, Banana Island, was the kind of place people slowed down to stare at. A towering black gate, a flawless driveway. Cars so polished they caught the sun like mirrors. But past that perfect exterior, the air was heavy. The staff moved like shadows. The cleaner avoided eye contact. Even Mama Ronke, a chef who had once cooked for presidents, measured every step, as though afraid to disturb the silence. That silence had a source. One person, Madame Rose Richards. Some called her Madame Ice, others Madame Perfection. And when she passed, older staff muttered a name in hushed tones, one they dared not say aloud in her presence. At 33, Madame Rose looked like she had stepped out of a fashion magazine. Tall, fair-skinned, and always dressed like she had a red carpet waiting, even if she was only going to the garden. Her perfume lingered long after she left the room. Her words, even longer. She didn't just give instructions, she commanded. She didn't just discipline. She struck, with a slap or a sentence sharp enough to leave invisible wounds. In this house, her opinion was law. And in just half a year, 9 maids had walked out under that same black gate. Some in tears, some in silence. One without her shoes. The house itself wasn't the problem. The work wasn't the problem. The problem was her. Madame Rose. She was Mr. Femi Richards' second wife. The first had died many years ago, leaving a silence in the mansion that was never truly filled. Mr. Femi Richards was a man who carried power like a second skin, almost 60, with silver streaks in his hair, 2 thriving oil companies, and more houses than most people owned pairs of shoes. People spoke his name everywhere. Of course they did. But what they whispered about the most was the maids. Until Naomi arrived, nobody said hello. Nobody asked her name, because they were tired of learning names that changed every week. The housekeeper simply pointed to a mop and muttered, "Start with the marble floors. Madam is coming downstairs." Naomi didn't argue. She tied her scarf, picked up the mop, and began to work. She had one reason for being there. Her daughter, Deborah, in and out of the hospital. The bills were piling high, threatening to drown her. Naomi whispered to herself, "Just endure it. Even if they insult you, endure it. 3 months, that's all." For Debbie, she was still wiping the center rug when she heard it. Click, clack, click, clack. Heels, sharp ones. Then silence. Naomi looked up, and there she was, Madame Rose, standing at the top of the stairs in a wine-colored silk robe, holding a cup of tea like she owned the whole world. She looked Naomi up and down, then at the mop, then at the water bucket beside her, and without saying a word, she tipped the bucket over. The water splashed across the clean tiles. Naomi gasped, stepping back. Madame Rose came close, eyes cold. "This is the 3rd time this week someone blocks my walkway. I'm not in the mood. Clean it. Now." Naomi didn't speak. She bent down, picked up the mop again. Her slippers were soaked. But she kept cleaning. From the hallway, the housekeeper whispered under her breath, "She won't last. She looks too soft." But what nobody knew was this. Naomi had buried her pride long ago. She had cleaned homes where they treated her worse. She had begged in hospitals for her daughter's life. She wasn't soft. She was silent fire. The next morning, Naomi woke up before 5 a.m. She swept the front yard, cleaned the glass doors, and mopped the sitting room again. This time with less water, no splash, no mistakes. She didn't come to joke. By 6:30 a.m. she was in the kitchen, washing plates beside Mama Ronke, the cook. "You woke up early," Mama Ronke said, surprised. Naomi smiled gently. "I'm just trying to do my work." Just be careful. This house, it's not by early morning, oh. It's by surviving Madam's mouth." Right on cue, they heard the slippers. Soft, controlled, angry. Madame Rose entered the kitchen with a silk robe tied tight around her waist and her phone in her hand. "Where's my lemon water?" she asked sharply. Mama Ronke rushed forward. "I was just about to. I wasn't asking you." She cut in, turning her gaze to Naomi. Naomi wiped her hand and bowed slightly. "I'll get it now, Ma." Madame Rose narrowed her eyes. "Room temperature. Not cold, not warm. Just right. Do you understand?" "Yes, Ma. Because if I take one sip and my throat feels like it entered sauna, you will regret your life." Naomi nodded. "Yes, Ma." She picked a glass, poured water from the dispenser, and carefully added 2 slices of lemon. She walked slowly. Steady hands, quiet feet. Up the marble stairs to Madame Rose's room. She knocked. "Ma, your water." "Come in." The room was spotless. Gold curtains. Perfume bottles shining on a dresser. A small white dog sat on the bed like royalty. Naomi placed the tray gently on the side table. Madame Rose didn't say thank you. She took the glass, sipped, paused. Naomi's heart beat fast. Then, Madame Rose smirked. "You're lucky," she said. "You got it right." But just as Naomi turned to leave, Madame Rose spoke again. "There's a stain on the bathroom sink. I hate stains." "I'll clean it now, Ma." As Naomi entered the bathroom, her eyes caught a faint rust stain on the sink. Likely from someone's ring. Without hesitation, she reached for the cleaning spray and began to scrub gently, careful and focused. Then, thud, her shoulder brushed a perfume bottle. It wobbled. She caught it just in time, her breath hitching. A quiet sigh of relief escaped her lips. But when she turned around, Madame Rose was standing by the doorway, arms folded. Without a word of warning, she walked forward and slapped Naomi hard across the face. Naomi's head turned with the force. "You're clumsy," Madame Rose said coldly. "I don't like clumsy people." Naomi's eyes burned, but she didn't cry. She bowed her head and whispered, "I'm sorry, Ma." Then, gently, she picked up the perfume bottle and placed it back in perfect line with the others. Hands trembling, spirit steady. "You'll clean the guest room next," Madame Rose said, already sinking into her bed, phone in hand. "And iron the bed sheet while it's on the bed. I don't like rumples." Naomi nodded again. "Yes, Ma." As she left the room, Mr. Femi was standing in the hallway. Graybeard, neatly ironed agbada, calm face. He had heard everything. Their eyes met. He didn't speak, but Naomi could see it. That small flicker in his eyes. Pity. But she didn't need pity. She needed that salary. She walked past him without a word and went straight to the guest room. Because in Naomi's heart, one thing was clear. She would not leave. Not until her daughter could live. By the 3rd day, everyone in the house was watching. Naomi hadn't cried. She hadn't shouted. She hadn't packed her bag and run like the others. But Madame Rose wasn't done. Not even close. She didn't like being ignored. She didn't like being studied. And something about Naomi's silence felt like defiance. So she turned the temperature up. First, it was the missing uniforms. Naomi had just finished cleaning the guest room when she returned to her quarters and found her uniform gone. All that was left in the cupboard was a see-through lace nightgown that obviously wasn't hers. Naomi didn't say a word. She came out wearing a faded t-shirt and her own wrapper. The housekeeper gasped. "You're going out like that?" Naomi only replied, "It's clean. It's decent. It's enough." Later that day, Madame Rose came downstairs, took one look at her, and smiled. A slow, mocking smile. "Did you sleep in the gutter, or are you just dressing to match the mop?" Some of the staff chuckled nervously. Naomi didn't respond. She bowed, picked up the mop, and kept working. But the more she didn't react, the more Madame Rose became unsettled. Then came the accidents. Madame Rose poured red wine on the white sitting room rug and acted like it was a mistake, but it wasn't. She did it on purpose, just to test Naomi's patience. Naomi didn't ask questions. She didn't complain. She quietly picked up a towel and started cleaning. Once Madame Rose even accused Naomi of breaking a crystal bowl that she herself had knocked over. Still, no reaction. Naomi simply said, "I'll clean it up, Ma." Even Mr. Femi Richards began to notice. One evening he sat quietly in the garden with his newspaper when he saw Naomi sweeping near the flowers. Her wrapper was torn at the edge. Her face looked tired, but her hands were steady. "Naomi, right?" he asked, voice low. "Yes, sir," she said, stopping to greet him properly. "Are they treating you well here?" he asked carefully. She paused, then smiled. "They're treating me like life treats many of us, sir. But I'll be okay." He blinked. That night, Mr. Femi looked at Rose and said, "Why is that girl still here? With the way you've treated her, most people would have quit by now." Rose took a slow sip of her wine, smiled slightly and said, "She's still useful. That's why she's here." But even she could feel it. The energy in the house had changed. Naomi didn't fight back with words or tears. She fought back with presence, with patience, with that quiet, unshakable dignity that you can't buy in the market. And that was starting to scare Madame Rose. It was Saturday morning. The sky was heavy with clouds, and a soft drizzle tapped gently on the windows of the mansion. Inside, the house was unusually quiet. No insults, no slammed doors, no shouted names. Naomi noticed. She had just finished sweeping the east wing when she passed by the hallway mirror and saw a reflection that made her stop. Madame Rose, seated on the marble floor, barefoot, her silk scarf half falling off her head, makeup smeared, mascara running like someone had wiped tears too fast. Naomi froze. She had never seen the woman look human. Madame Rose didn't see her yet. She was staring at herself in the mirror, almost like she didn't recognize the woman looking back. Her red wine from last night still sat on the floor. Her phone was locked, her heels thrown to one side. Naomi wanted to turn back. This wasn't her business. But something deeper than duty held her feet in place. She stepped forward. Slowly. Madame Rose turned sharply. Her face, usually fierce and firm, looked cracked. Soft even. "What do you want?" she asked sharply, wiping her face fast. Naomi bowed her head. "Sorry, Ma. I didn't mean to disturb." She placed a small, neatly folded, clean towel beside her on the floor. Then she turned to leave. "Wait." Naomi stopped. Rose stared at her, eyes red, voice shaky. "Why do you stay?" she asked. Naomi was quiet for a moment. Then she said gently, "Because I need to, for my daughter. You could get another job." Naomi smiled faintly. "Maybe, but they won't pay like this one, and my daughter's hospital doesn't accept stories." Rose looked at her, studied her face. "You're not scared of me?" Naomi hesitated, then said the truth. "I used to be scared of life, but when you face death in a hospital ward holding your child's hand, nothing else can really break you again." Madame Rose looked away. For a long while she said nothing. Then, quietly, she whispered something Naomi never expected to hear. "They said I wasn't good enough." Naomi's brow furrowed. "Who, Ma?" "My husband's friends, his family, even people in church. They said I was too young, too flashy, that I was just a trophy wife. No substance." Her voice cracked a little. "I thought if I could control everything, if the house was spotless, if the staff were perfect, if I never let anyone get too close, maybe I'd feel in control of something." Naomi said nothing. She simply sat beside her on the floor. Not too close, not too far, not to advise, not to argue, just to be there. And for the first time, Madame Rose didn't tell her to leave. The next day, Sunday morning, came with soft Harmattan air and a strange kind of peace inside the house. For the first time since Naomi arrived, no one shouted her name. There were no slammed doors, no sarcasm from the staircase. The house, for once, felt like it could breathe. Naomi swept the front porch, humming quietly to herself. A soft church chorus her mother used to sing when life was heavy. She didn't even notice Madame Rose standing behind her, watching. "Is that a gospel song?" Rose asked, her voice calm. Naomi turned, surprised. "Yes, Ma. From long ago?" Then, without another word, Madame Rose turned and walked back inside. No insult, no warning, just presence. The staff noticed it immediately. In the kitchen, Mama Ronke whispered to the steward, "Did she just pass me without shouting about Pepper?" He nodded. "She even said good morning." The gate man, Musa, asked Naomi that afternoon, "Wetin you give Madame chop?" "She'd a smile this morning." Naomi smiled faintly. Sometimes people don't need food. They just need someone not to leave. That evening, something strange happened. Naomi entered the master bedroom with a cup of tea. The usual routine. But this time, Madame Rose was not on the phone. She wasn't giving instructions or fixing her nails. She was sitting by the window holding a small framed photo of Mr. Femi Richards and his late first wife. Her expression was unreadable. Naomi placed the tea gently on the side table. "Thank you," Madame Rose said quietly. Naomi froze. It wasn't just that she said thank you. It was how she said it. Like someone letting go of a heavy load. "You're the first maid that didn't try to impress me." She added after a moment, "You just did the work." Naomi spoke softly. "I'm not here to impress, Ma. I'm here to survive." Rose looked at her again. Properly, this time. "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" Naomi smiled sadly. "So has everyone, Ma. Some just hide it better." Madame Rose nodded slowly. Then, to Naomi's shock, she said, "Tomorrow, take the day off. Visit your daughter. I'll pay for the transport." Naomi's eyes widened. "Ma?" "You heard me. Go and see her. Come back by evening." Naomi blinked. It had been 3 weeks since she saw her child. She hadn't asked for time off because she was too afraid. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice almost breaking. Madame Rose turned back to the window. "Don't thank me. Just don't stop being you." The next morning, Naomi stood at the gate of the mansion holding a small white envelope. Inside it, 20,000 naira, wrapped in tissue, folded neatly. Madame Rose had placed it beside her breakfast tray with a note that read, "For transport and whatever she might need." Naomi's hands trembled holding it. It wasn't just about the money. It was the kindness. Soft, quiet, almost shy. She boarded a kiki from Ikoyi to Surulere, then a bus to the hospital in Masha, where her daughter, Deborah, had spent the last 2 weeks under quiet observation. Deborah was 9, slim, gentle. Her heart condition made her fragile, but her smile was sunlight on the hardest day. When Naomi entered the ward, Deborah looked up. "Mummy." Naomi rushed to her and knelt beside the bed, holding her close. "My baby, I missed you." They sat together for a while, Naomi gently feeding her pap and telling her stories. Not of pain, not of struggle, but of hope. Then, Naomi pulled out a small, cheap but colorful hair ribbon she'd bought from the road. "See what I got you." Deborah grinned. "Mummy, you said you'll bring me home when you get money. Is it soon?" Naomi paused. She held Deborah's tiny hand and whispered, "Very soon, my love. God is helping us. Just hold on." What she didn't know was that Madame Rose had called her driver to quietly check where she went. Not out of suspicion, but curiosity. When the driver returned, he simply said, "She went to the hospital in Surulere. The daughter is there. The nurses know her." Madame Rose didn't respond. She just nodded, then went back into her room. That night, while brushing her hair at her dressing table, she stared into her mirror. For a long time, she thought of Naomi's quiet face, of the way her hands shook slightly when she served tea, of the way she never complained, of her daughter, sick yet smiling. She thought of herself, of the woman she had become, of the things she never said sorry for. And then, she cried. Not loudly, just 2 tears, silent. But they were the first in years. Monday morning came like any other. Sunlight filtered through the long white curtains. The kitchen buzzed softly as Mama Ronke stirred stew in the pot. But something had shifted. Like the air itself had exhaled. For the first time in weeks, Naomi walked into the house without that weight on her shoulders. She had held her daughter again. She had seen her smile. And somehow, she had seen a different side of Madame Rose. As she tied her apron and picked up her broom, the housekeeper walked past and stopped. You really came back?" she asked, surprised. Naomi smiled. "I said I would." From upstairs, Madame Rose's voice called out, but softer this time. "Naomi, come, please. Please." Everyone in the house paused like someone hit a remote control. Naomi went up to the master bedroom, heart steady. Madame Rose sat at her vanity, brushing her hair. "You're back early," she said, not looking up. "Yes, Ma. I left the hospital by 6 a.m. There was a pause. Then Rose turned, holding a white envelope. "This is for Deborah's medication." Naomi blinked. "Ma? Don't argue, just take it." She handed her 50,000 naira in cash. Naomi's hands shook. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Madame Rose looked away, almost uncomfortable. "You said something that day," she said, "about how life can break you until nothing scares you anymore." "Yes, Ma. Well, I think I've been fighting the wrong people." Naomi looked at her gently. "Pain makes us do things, Ma, but it doesn't have to make us cruel." That sentence hung in the air like perfume, soft, lingering. Later that afternoon, Madame Rose walked into the kitchen and called Mama Ronke by name. The old cook nearly dropped her wooden spoon. "Yes, Ma? Your stew smells nice," Madame Rose said. "What leaf did you use today?" Mama Ronke stammered. Just scent leaf and crayfish, Ma." Madame Rose nodded. "It's good, thank you." The staff couldn't believe it. The silent fear that used to hang in the house like heavy fog. It was lifting. Even Mr. Femi Richards noticed. That evening, as he sat in the living room reading his newspaper, he watched his wife pass by. No shouting, no insults, no icy glares. Then he looked at Naomi, who was carefully wiping down the glass table. He folded his paper and said, "Thank you, Naomi." Naomi looked up, surprised. "Sir, for staying," he said. "You've done something no one else could." Naomi smiled faintly, bowed and kept cleaning. But her heart was full, because in that moment she realized something. She didn't just come to clean a house. She came to clean pain, and she had done it, one silent day at a time. 2 weeks passed, and in those 2 weeks the house changed completely. No shouting, no broken glass, no walking on eggshells. Staff began to smile again. The gardener sang while trimming the hedges. Mama Ronke even made puff puff for everyone on Friday morning. The first time in 6 months. But the biggest change was in Madame Rose. She no longer barked orders. She said please. She said thank you. She didn't just walk past Naomi anymore. She waited to ask how her daughter was doing. And then one Thursday evening she did something nobody could have imagined. She called Naomi into the living room. "Dress well tomorrow," she said. Naomi frowned. "Ma, you're following me somewhere." "Where?" "To my women's luncheon." Naomi's eyes widened. "Ma, I can't go to that kind of event." "Yes, you can," Rose said calmly. "You'll just come with me. I want you there." Naomi had no words. Madame Rose went on. "There are some women I need to introduce you to. Doctors, NGO workers. One of them runs a health foundation. She may be able to help with Deborah's treatment." Naomi's eyes began to glisten. "Ma, I don't even have— I already bought you something." Madame Rose interrupted gently. "It's on your bed." When Naomi returned to her room, there it was. A soft peach-colored gown, simple and elegant, folded beside a matching headscarf. Naomi touched it slowly. She sat on the bed and wept quietly. Not because she was sad, but because someone finally saw her. The next day, Naomi rode in the back of Madame Rose's SUV. The driver opened the door for her like she belonged. At the event, people stared. Madame Rose walked into the fancy restaurant with Naomi by her side, like an equal. Not a maid, not a worker, but a woman who mattered. "This is Naomi," Rose said to one of the ladies at the table. She's stronger than most women I know, and her daughter is a fighter." The woman smiled. "I run a Children's Heart Foundation. Maybe we can help. Send me her details." Naomi stood there, frozen in gratitude. And in that moment she knew this wasn't just a job anymore. This wasn't just survival. This was the beginning of something new. The next Monday morning started like any other. Naomi was in the kitchen, gently peeling yam when her small phone rang. Unknown number. She wiped her hand on her wrapper and answered. "Hello? Good morning. Is this Miss Naomi, mother of Deborah?" Yes, this is she. "This is Dr. Adesua from the Children's Cardiac Foundation. Madam Rose referred you to us after the luncheon last week." Naomi stood slowly, the yam peeler falling from her hand. "Yes, doctor. I remember her telling me something. Well, we've reviewed your daughter's case, her test results, her records, and we'd like to sponsor her next 2 procedures fully, at no cost." Silence. Naomi gripped the kitchen counter. I'm sorry, Ma. What did you say?" "You heard me, Ma," the doctor said with a smile in her voice. "We're covering the cost, transport, medications, everything. We'll even assign a pediatric nurse to follow up after her surgery." Naomi dropped to her knees. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered, "Thank you, Jesus! Thank you." Mama Ronke rushed in, alarmed. "What time happen?" Naomi looked up, eyes red but smiling. "They're paying for Deborah's surgery." The entire kitchen exploded in joy. Even the driver who walked in to collect keys paused and said, "Naomi, you mean M?" Naomi nodded, still crying, still overwhelmed. "Madam Rose." She made it happen. That evening, Naomi entered Madam Rose's room quietly, carrying a fresh cup of lemon tea. She placed it on the table and turned to leave. But Rose stopped her. "Did they call?" Naomi turned slowly. "Yes, Ma, this afternoon." She couldn't hold back the tears. "They're paying for everything. Deborah can have the surgery. She might actually live." Rose's eyes softened. "I told you not to thank me. I have to," Naomi said, wiping her tears. "Because you didn't have to help." "But you did." Madam Rose looked away for a moment, then said softly, "Helping you helped me?" Naomi smiled. "I don't understand. I used to think strength was in controlling everything. But I watched you suffer quietly, serve gently, and still smile." She looked Naomi in the eye. "You reminded me what real strength is." From that day forward, the house began to treat Naomi differently. The housekeeper deferred to her. Mama Ronke saved the best meat for her plate. Even Musa the gateman now greeted her with a proud, "Auntie Naomi, good morning, oh." She was still a maid on paper, yes, but in truth, she had become the heart of the home. 2 weeks later, the hospital room was filled with quiet beeping sounds and slow breaths. Deborah lay peacefully, wrapped in soft pink sheets, her chest rising and falling evenly. The surgery had been a success. Naomi had not left her side for 2 days. She slept in the chair, prayed through the night, and cried silent tears when the doctor said, "She's doing well. The worst is over." On the 3rd morning, she dressed in her cleanest wrapper and prepared to go back to the mansion. She kissed Deborah's forehead and whispered, "Mummy will be back soon. Rest well, my angel." As Naomi arrived at the mansion gate, Musa, the gateman, stood straight and opened it with a wide smile. "Auntie Naomi, welcome, oh." Inside, the compound looked freshly washed, flowers arranged neatly. The air felt expectant. She walked toward the house and paused. All the staff were waiting in the front yard. The gardener, the steward, the cleaner. Even Mama Ronke stood in the middle, beaming like a proud auntie at a naming ceremony. Before Naomi could say a word, the door opened. Madam Rose stepped out. She wasn't wearing her usual silk robe. Today she wore a calm blue gown, no makeup, just a light smile. "Naomi," she said gently. "Welcome back." Naomi bowed slightly. "Thank you, Ma. I have something to show you." She walked over to a small table set up under the mango tree. On it sat a framed document, covered in transparent wrap. She lifted it and handed it to Naomi. Naomi opened it and froze. "Promotion letter. head of household operations. Naomi looked up in confusion. Madame Rose continued. You've earned it. You'll oversee the staff now. Better pay, better quarters, and full medical support for Deborah, moving forward. Naomi couldn't speak. She just stared at the letter. Then at Madame Rose. Why me, Ma? She finally asked, voice trembling. Because you did what no one else could, Rose replied. You didn't just clean the house. You cleaned the air, the fear, the pain. She paused. And you stayed, even when I gave you every reason to leave. Naomi covered her mouth, her eyes full. Mama Ronke stepped forward with a tray of small chops. Make we celebrate small, she said, laughing. The whole staff clapped and cheered. Even Mr. Femi Richards came downstairs to shake Naomi's hand. You have done well, Naomi. Thank you for bringing peace to my home. Naomi couldn't stop the tears anymore. But this time, they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of honor. Naomi had never lived in anything like the new staff quarters before. The small room she used to share with brooms and buckets was gone. Now she had a space of her own, clean, painted, with a small fan that worked, and a soft mattress that didn't dip in the middle. But what touched her most wasn't the new quarters. It was the way people looked at her now, not as the maid, not even as the survivor, but as the woman who brought peace. Every morning the staff greeted her first. The housekeeper asked for her opinion. Even Musa, the gateman, stood straighter when speaking to her. But the biggest shift was Madame Rose. She no longer shouted. She no longer snapped. She started asking Naomi about Deborah's health, her schooling, even her favorite colors. But one night something deeper happened. Naomi was in the kitchen packing leftovers when Madame Rose entered quietly. No makeup, no slippers, just her robe and bare feet. Do you have a minute? She asked. Naomi nodded. They walked together to the back patio. The moon was bright. Crickets sang softly in the garden. Then Rose said, Do you know I was once a housemaid too? Naomi turned sharply. Ma? I was 13, Rose said, her voice distant. My mother died. My father. Well, he wasn't the father type. I ended up in a rich man's house in Enugu. His wife hated me. She didn't hit me. She didn't even insult me out loud. But she made sure I felt like a stray dog. Naomi's heart sank. I told myself one day I'd be the madam, that I'd never be weak again, that nobody would ever treat me small. She looked away, shame flickering in her eyes. I became strong, cold, sharp. I thought that was power. But when I met you, I saw something else. Naomi listened quietly. You reminded me of the girl I buried, the girl who cried quietly while cleaning someone else's floor. You didn't fight with pride. You fought with patience. There was a long pause. Then Rose added softly, I'm sorry for everything. Naomi reached out and gently placed her hand over Madame Rose's, and for a moment they sat there, two women from different worlds, bound by pain, softened by understanding. Naomi whispered, Sometimes God doesn't take us through fire to burn us. He takes us through to make us light for others, still inside the dark. Madame Rose nodded, tears quietly sliding down her cheek. She didn't wipe them. She let them fall. Because this time, they were healing her. It was a bright Friday morning when Deborah came home. Naomi stood at the gate, her hands shaking with joy as the taxi pulled in. Inside, her daughter sat wearing a yellow dress, her cheeks rounder, her smile brighter. A tiny scar sat near her chest, the only proof of what she had survived. Mummy. Naomi opened the car door and pulled her daughter into her arms. She didn't cry. She just held her tight, breathing in the smell of soap and hope. But what Naomi didn't expect was this. The whole house was waiting. Under the mango tree, a small table had been set up. Juice, chin-chin, and puff-puff in clean trays. The cook, Mama Ronke, had made jollof rice with fried plantain. The cleaner brought out plastic chairs. Even Musa hung balloons made from blown gloves. And right in the middle of them all, wearing a soft pink gown and a bright smile, stood Madame Rose. She walked up to Deborah, knelt beside her, and offered her a small wrapped gift. "It's a storybook," she said. "Naomi said you like reading. I thought maybe we could start one together." Deborah took it shyly. "Thank you, Ma." Rose smiled. "Call me Auntie Rose." Naomi watched the scene with full eyes. Once upon a time she had been slapped for spilling water. Now the same hands were gently combing her daughter's hair. Mr. Femi Richards stepped forward next, clearing his throat. "I don't say much in this house, but I must say this. Naomi, you have reminded us what true strength looks like." He turned to Deborah. "You are always welcome here, my dear. This is your second home now." The entire staff clapped. Deborah grinned wide. Naomi turned to Madame Rose and whispered, "I don't know how to thank you." Rose shook her head. "You already did. You didn't leave." As the sun climbed higher and laughter filled the yard, something became clear. The mansion on Bishop Adeyemi Drive, once known for silence and shouting, now echoed with something different. Joy, family, light. And it all started because one woman didn't give up. Weeks passed. Deborah started getting stronger. She laughed more, ate well. Sometimes she followed Naomi to the mansion, sitting quietly with a book while her mother worked. The house had changed. The cold marble floors now echoed with small footsteps and laughter. The walls that once held fear now held warmth. And Madame Rose? She changed the most. She started teaching Deborah how to fold napkins and water the garden. She smiled more, listened more, and every now and then she'd sit with Naomi under the mango tree. No title, no pride. Just woman to woman. One evening as the sun painted the sky gold, Naomi sat with Deborah in her lap, humming softly while peeling oranges. Madame Rose stepped out with 2 cups of zobo and handed one to Naomi. Then she said something that would stay with Naomi forever. "You know, the day I slapped you, I was sure you'd leave like the others. I wanted you to. I couldn't stand anyone seeing who I really was underneath all the pride." Naomi looked at her gently. "And now?" Rose smiled. "Now I thank God you didn't leave." She took a sip, then added, "You weren't just a maid in this house. You were the mirror I was too scared to look into, and the comfort I never knew I needed." Naomi wiped a tear from her cheek and whispered, "And you gave my daughter a second chance at life." I'll never forget that, as the evening breeze swayed the trees and laughter echoed from the kitchen. Naomi closed her eyes and breathed in the peace. She had come to this house with nothing but pain, silence, and a nylon bag. Now, she had respect, she had honor, she had hope, and she had become the woman no one could forget. Not because she fought, not because she shouted, but because she stayed, and in staying she healed. Sometimes the strongest people don't make noise. They don't throw fists or raise their voices. They simply stay, and in staying, they change everything. If you were touched by Naomi's story, let us know in the comments. Where in the world are you watching from? And don't forget to subscribe to Folktales by Olivia for more emotional, dramatic, and unforgettable stories. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and keep watching.